Yo, what's up? Today I'm going to be talking about The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, a book I was supposed to read in college, but did not. And I'm sad that I didn't. I should have. It would have been a perfect book for me then. In the literature world, most people have heard about this book, but if you haven't, it's definitely one worth picking up if you're interested in depression or women in the 1950s dealing with patriarchal society and just dealing with all sorts of things. A little bit about Sylvia Plath. She was born in 1932, passed in 1963. She took her own life, which she's kind of famous for. She was 31 years old. Best known for The Bell Jar and Ariel, which is a collection of poems that I was also supposed to read in college and didn't, which I plan on getting to. But yeah, this book is pretty revolutionary because, it came out in the 1950s. I actually didn't even see what exact year. 1948, it looks like. And, it's a woman talking about mental illness. And at the time, both those things, women writers and speaking about depression and mental illness was a rarity. And so now you have 2 for 1. Sorry about the dogs. And it's definitely worth checking out. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It'll probably be on my top 10 for the year. But who's to say? I've been reading a lot of good books this year. But I definitely really enjoyed it, and I might turn to it and reread it sometime in the future. But yeah, so it's about this woman, and it's pretty semi-autobiographical. Her name's Esther Greenwood. Esther. I just now realized I've never said that out loud. I've only said it in my head, so maybe I don't know how to say it. Esther Greenwood, and she's in New York City. She's in college. She's kind of living the life that she wanted to live. She's in this program, and she gets to write and read and go to these photo shoots and go to these luncheons with all these people in New York City and everything that she kind of really wanted to do, and she doesn't really know why this isn't making her happy, and she just slowly kind of slips into madness, and and yeah, and I think for anyone who's in college or in their early 20s, I think this is a book that you need to read. And I wish I had it when I was at the time coming from someone who's dealt with suicidal tendencies and depression myself. I felt like this would have been the perfect book at the time, and I regret not reading it. So if you've thought about it and haven't done it, I definitely suggest that you do it. But yeah, so she's speaking about mental illness, depression specifically, suicidal tendencies. She's speaking out against traditional roles for women in the 1940s and 50s. She doesn't want to be married or be a housewife or any of these things that she is supposed to do, and that are women roles that she is against and has no desire to do or be. And and yeah, and so you have to remember with these types of books that the only way for writers to be able to write about this type of stuff is to experience it themselves and to really know it, since it's such a personal topic. But yeah, I don't know. It just had me thinking that, most books are, have to be semi-autobiographical because all writers are taking from their own personal experiences, and it's not like they can just make something out of nothing, really, because they have to, take things from their own lives and from their own experiences. And as I grow older, the more I see, I don't know, authors doing that. And me trying to be a writer or am a writer myself, nothing's, really fiction, in my opinion. But, anyways, moving on. So what's this about? She's in NYC, doing all these things that she's wanted to do in the summer program in the 1940s. And she, kind of has her first sexual experiences. Her first boyfriend, who is rich, is pretty much a good guy, and, he wants to marry her, and she has all these things that she thinks that she should want, but she doesn't want them, and she doesn't know why. And the depression just creeps up, and as the novel goes on, it keeps on increasing and increasing. And she gets sent to a mental hospital. She experiences shock therapy. She experiences a very close like rape scene, and just how she's treated by men and doctors and her mother and the people around her. It's just, honestly, I'm trying to think of a different word besides revolutionary, but it was just something that you just didn't see at the time, and it's definitely worth checking out. But yeah, she kind of becomes an unreliable narrator as we kind of get sucked into her own madness by the end, and you don't really know what's real and what's not, what's actually happening to her and what's not. And, but yeah, I don't want to run too much. I mean, that kind of gives you the premise of the book. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. And and yeah. And just to say, this isn't a spoiler, but it definitely had a more hopeful ending than I was expecting. I always heard this was like a depressing book. I mean, obviously it's about depression, but with her, taking her own life, I was expecting a very sad ending, and honestly, it kind of had an uplifting ending, which kind of makes me wish I read it even more at the time when I needed to. But yeah, to give you some references or some idea of the writing. Oh, also I wanted to say that it reminded me of Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, with like the doctors and the shock treatment, and just like how screwed up like psychology treatments were in the 1940s and 50s, and that type of thing. And that was like one of the first books that really like got me into literature, for me personally, that I read on my own. But yeah. So from 182, you have I wanted to tell her that if only something were wrong with my body, it would be fine. I would rather have anything wrong with my body than something wrong with my head. But the idea seemed so involved and wearisome that I just didn't say anything. I only buried it further in my bed. And 185. I knew I should be grateful to Mrs. Guinea. Only I couldn't feel a thing. If Mrs. Guinea had given me a ticket to Europe or around the world to cruise, it wouldn't have made one scrap of difference to me, because wherever I sat, on the deck of a ship or a street cafe in Paris or Bangkok, I would be sitting under the same glass bell jar, stewing in my own sour air. she's definitely a magnificent writer, and some of the lines would just come out of nowhere and just like hit me real hard. And and I love books that have titles that don't really make sense until you read the book. Like The Bell Jar, I had no idea what she was like, what that had to do with anything, and it doesn't really come into like the half of the book where she explains that, like, you know, depression or mental illness is like experiencing life looking through a bell jar, or kind of like an eyeglass, or a fisheye lens, where it's just like, you know, you're disassociated with reality. Things are happening around you, but things aren't really happening to you because you're so in your own world. But thanks for sticking with me. If you're still, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.